And today we're going to talk about Coach Wooden. We're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about this Wooden's Wisdom product that you have. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. So you brought these papers in, Craig.
Yeah, but before we did 4, 3, 2, 1, you said Piggy Lambert.
Piggy Lambert.
Stop. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200.
Okay.
Because I know one of the favorite questions, which is a great question that Lynn Guerin with the Wooden Course started the whole thing out. His whole idea of the Wooden Course was, how did John Wooden become John Wooden? Which I think is one of the greatest questions ever. And that takes us right to Piggy Lambert. So let's go backwards on that.
Ward Piggy Lambert.
Yeah, forget about that for 1 second. We're going to go backwards.
All right.
So John Wooden coached in 10 national championship games. 10. And his teams won all 10.
He didn't ever lose the big game?
10 for 10. And I always say to people that never reach their potential, explain away how great people do things. Well, there wasn't that many teams. It was 100 years ago. That doesn't apply now. People that become great, all the great people I've studied, don't say that. They say, how did he do that? So when I'm looking at Coach Wooden, I'm going, how did he do that? So I started with my best friend, a guy named Larry Farmer, who played for John Wooden, 89-1 as a player. And I said, so Farm, I said, you're sitting in the locker room before a national championship game. What are you thinking about? And he says, well, Imp, he goes, one thing, I wasn't worried about a scouting report because we didn't have one, but I knew I could do the job defensively because Coach had given me all the fundamentals to figure out whatever situation I was in, I could execute. If I needed to go under a screen, over a screen, I would make those adjustments on my own. And I knew that my coach was very serious about me doing my best. And I knew I could do that. So that was that. And he says the locker room was very quiet in kind of a focused, relaxed way. I asked Kenny Booker, another great UCLA player, the same question. I got almost an identical answer. There's a great story that Kareem tells about when he got to his first national championship game with Coach Wooden, that Coach Wooden comes in the locker room and he walks over to the blackboard, and Kareem is like, man, at last this guy is going to put something on the blackboard. We're going to see what the secret sauce is. He hasn't done it all year. And he says, Coach Wooden starts drawing a diagram on the backboard, and then he's explaining to us where we're going to stand for the national anthem. So Coach Wooden's pregame talk was always the same. I've done my job. It's time for you to do yours. Now let's go get them. And we call that staying loose, right? Because the guys are loose. They're ready to go. Boom, right? In the other locker room, the guy's going, this is your shining moment. This is the one moment in your life. Biggest game. You're never going to have another chance like this. And the guys in that locker room are going,
got it.
They're locking up, right? So that's kind of the start of that whole journey. And you're going, Jason's sitting there going, Imp, what does this have to do possibly with Piggy Lambert?
John Wooden. You read my mind.
Yes, all right.
Okay.
I'm going to get you there, brother.
Okay, good.
So John Wooden wrote one book himself. Must read for everybody, whether you like basketball or not. It's called Practical Modern Basketball. It's a 387-page textbook on how he did everything that he did. I think the first two chapters of the book, or the first chapter of the book, is the best chapter on leadership that I've ever read, but that's that. Now, John Wooden's college coach at Purdue, Hall of Famer, his name is Piggy Lambert. And an interesting backstory on Piggy is that when he came to Purdue, he brought in, there was a tip after every made basket back then. And basketball was ball control game.
I don't understand that. There was a tip after every made
After
basket.
every made basket, there was a center jump.
Oh, a center jump. Got it.
After every made basket.
Right.
That's the way the game was played. And the game was all about ball control. Slow down, very methodical. That's the way it was played.
I don't want to. You're rolling. After every basket,
Yeah, there's a jump ball.
the ref took the ball
And they went to center circle and they had a
and
jump
they
ball.
jumped it again.
Yeah. We're going to get it. We're,
Had no idea.
Yeah. Anyway, so Lambert comes along and he brings in this new style of basketball, which is real fast. And he's nationally, they think it's a circus. People aren't going to come to watch it. He's ruining the game. Of course, that was the genesis of the fast break because he ran fast break plays off every tip. So rather than tip it and hold it, he'd tip it this way. This guy would cut that way. And as John Wooden was explaining this to me at lunch one day, drawing the tip plays up on a napkin, I said, well, Coach Wooden, that's like your fast break drills. But you did them from the backboard instead of the center. He goes, well, where do you think I got them from? Piggy Lambert wrote a book. His book was called Practical Basketball. So if you were a coach back in the 30s, in your little briefcase, you would have had Practical Basketball. John Wooden wrote Practical Modern Basketball. I've written about both. I've written about Piggy Lambert in that book a lot. So now if you're trying to get to the thread from that locker room back to Piggy, one of the key things that Piggy eliminated, it was concerned about, was eliminating worry with his players. Whether they were worried about a girlfriend, whether they were worried about finances, whether they were worried about the outcome of the game. He didn't want his guys worried about stuff. He wanted them in a relaxed state because he recognized that one of the two most important things you have to have is balance. And to be on balance, you can't be tight mentally and you can't be tight physically. And that's where Wooden, from Piggy Lambert, got this let's eliminate the worry approach from a mental standpoint in games. Replicate it by others? Sure. Bill Russell, what was that, 11 championships in 13 seasons? Phil Jackson, he won a bunch. Might want to listen to those guys, right? Anson Dorrance, 23 soccer championships at the University of North Carolina. Same approach. So it's this eliminating worry. But in the background of that, it wasn't soft. Because then Farmer would take you back to the Wooden practices, which were, without him yelling, fierce, disciplined, and so competitive you wouldn't believe it. And I was up in the dorms with these guys, right? Going to school at UCLA with the Walton group. They weren't ever talking about it in the next game. They didn't know who they were going to play. They were talking smack about practice and what they were going to do to each other at practice the next day, or what practice was going to be like, or what happened in practice that day. And, you know, Farmer tells a great story. There's a drill that Coach Wooden had, where you throw the ball off the backboard and you go get a rebound, and then you throw an outlet pass. And Larry had done it as a freshman, and he's a good jumper. He did the drill. And now he gets to his first varsity practice. And in front of him in the line are two great All-Americans, Sidney Wicks and Curtis Rowe. And Sidney throws the ball off the backboard, and he goes about a foot above the rim.
Sidney Wicks.
Yeah, with his elbows over the rim. Right how high as he can jump. And then here comes Curtis, same thing. Run up the jump. And Farmer goes, holy smokes. These guys are having a jumping contest in a form rebounding drill, where all the other teams in America are just like, oh, get the ball off the backboard, right? These guys are, Jason, this is every drill. You can't imagine it. It's every drill, every day. So now, and he's recruiting guys that are competitive to pour some more Kool-Aid in the sauce. So when he gets him in the locker room, man, for a game, he's just trying to, get him to relax. But
You're
they didn't need to.
You're ready. You're ready. John Wooden practice. The John Wooden practice.
Yeah.
How many John Wooden practices did you go to?
1 or 2, maybe.
Okay. So
I would say that I did have the honor of working with Gary Cunningham, who was his assistant for 12 years. I had John Wooden speak at my basketball camps and run fundamentals for 30 years. So I did get to observe him firsthand. And I just cut you off, but that's okay. Here's the deal on Wooden, because we're kind of back to how did he do that, right? Yeah. Very underrated is the amount of work he put into his craft. All the stories, and it's easy to talk about. That it was 15 years before he won his first national championship, that he spent 2 hours every day planning a 2-hour practice. Easy to say those things. But you'd have to go back to when he was playing. I want to throw these headphones off because it's just like the amount of craft that he put in to becoming the Picasso that he was. Started out when he was a player in college. He's playing college basketball. He decides he's going to be a coach. So now, he's the best player in the country, by the way. When he's after games, he's going and interviewing and talking to the opposing coaches about how they do things.
After the game?
Yeah. Making his own notebook. His own coaching notebook. That's when he started, when he was playing. How to learn how to be a coach. Okay, how did you do it? Writing all this stuff down. And you want to know what happened to the notebook. He lent it to a guy at a coach's clinic, and the guy took it and never returned it. And yeah, John Wooden never even thought about it a second time. He figured the guy needed it more than he did. But that's what happened to the notebook, to answer that question. So he does that. So now he's a high school coach in South Bend. And he doesn't have any plan for practice. He just shows up at practice and does what he does. Well, I believe, if I get the name correct, Frank Leahy, I think, I might be wrong, Notre Dame had a very famous football coach who was winning national championships, who befriended John Wooden and invited him to a Notre Dame football practice. And he went and watched this Notre Dame football practice, and it was like something he'd never seen before, because it was like clockwork. It was like this drill, that drill, boom, 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 boom. Everything's like boom, 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 right? It was like, and Coach Wooden went, wow. Okay? So that's when he started this idea of planning his practices. Okay? So that's way back. Now, we get to this idea of spending 2 hours to plan a 2-hour practice. And who does that? Nobody. And who does that every day for 25 years, even though you are running basically the same drills? Tweaking things here, tweaking things there, constantly. And the routine is that they plan to practice. He has his little notebook, and I'm telling Jason this is kind of embarrassing because he knows all this already, but maybe the viewers don't know. But anyway, he's got this little notebook. He doesn't have a little notebook. He has a notebook with paper in it. And they end up playing practice. He puts on a little card. He goes down to practice. He runs to practice. During practice, he's making little notes, on his little card. He goes in the locker room after practice, after every practice, and before the coaches take a shower. My wife doesn't like that. I include that detail. Unnecessary, Craig. Before they take a shower, he debriefs them on practice. What they like, oh, coach, this drill could have been, this 5-minute drill could have been, 8 minutes. Oh, by the way, if he's in the middle of a 5-minute drill and it wasn't going well, he didn't make the drill 8 minutes. Executives, are you listening? The meeting doesn't get longer because you didn't plan it right. It's 5 minutes. But he would make a note that this drill probably should have been a little bit longer. And then he'd do the debriefing, right? Write his little notes up. And then the team would go over to the student union to have a team dinner. And Coach Wooden, while they were showering, would go immediately up to his office every day, and he would take that binder out. And then from that day's notes, he would write in, this didn't work, that didn't work, this didn't work, I should have done a better job here, boom, 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 boom. And then each day when you walked into his office to plan that day's practice, he would have the 4 notebooks opened up from the 3 previous years that they had practice on that same day. So 3 years ago on October 19th, we allowed 12 minutes to put this play in. We should have allowed whatever, and he's making these changes. And now to throw more good stuff in, debating was not hoped for. It was required. You know, companies say that we have diversity, inclusivity, all these things are in obviously important. And Coach Wooden was so far, I don't know if he was ahead on it, but he was so far ahead on that. But in interviewing his assistant coaches, which was done in a thing that was written about Coach, he demanded that they disagree with him. It wasn't like if we weren't Coach Wooden's staff and we go to the meeting, if we're not coming up with something, we're not going to be on the staff. And then he loved a great debate, just like I just wrote that about Margaret Thatcher last week, who loved a great debate, wanted it. Oh, let's get after it. And he would make you get up and you'd present your view, right? And to quote Gary Cunningham, there's Denny Crum and John Wooden arguing about a pivot for 25 minutes. About how exactly to make that pivot. And Coach is up and back and forth, and then they agreed on what they're going to do. And then I just wrote about Margaret Thatcher. That's why I just happened to flash. And then, because she would do this, but they leave that meeting with united front. Whatever they agreed upon, that's the way everybody would present it. But he's doing this every practice. And then there was the other famous topic of him taking, again, Jason knows all this, a topic each year that he wanted to study. We say free throw shooting is the most common example. And first of all, he would get everything out that he could possibly read about free throw shooting. Every journal he could read. Then he would look up all the best free throw shooting teams in the country. Then he would write their coaches a letter and say, would you do a survey for me? And he would send that survey out to these coaches and how they practice free throws. And then he would get all this data back, 10, 12 of them, on how they practice free throws. He would throw away the outliers. So the guy that spent 2 hours a day practicing free throws probably didn't have anything that he needed, right? And he would take all the middle details of that, and then he would make changes to the way that he practiced free throws. So let's do the natural outcome of just that conversation. And because we're talking about a John Wooden practice, constantly moving, initiative, no wasted time. So we have 7 and 7. We got the top 7 guys, and we got the bottom 7 guys. Got it? So the 5 guys were at the scrimmage now, and the 5 top guys are on one team, and the other 2 guys are out. But they're not idly out. They have to make a designated number of free throws, and then they can put themselves in the scrimmage. So you're on a side basket, and say it's you, Jason, and Coach Wood says, Jason, when you make 10 free throws in a row, you get Bibby out of the scrimmage. So you're over on the side, and he's got a manager over there checking you, because the guys would maybe fudge, because they wanted to get in that scrimmage, right? So you're making your 10 free throws in a row, right? And now you've done it. There's a dead ball. You go get Bibby out. And now Bibby's got to go make his free throws. And what's the big deal, Imp? I don't get it. Well, let's talk about initiative. Going and getting a guy out of the game, right? Let's talk about concentration. Think you're focusing on those free throws? Let's talk about pressure in practice. Are you putting pressure in practice? Is there any wasted time? So all these little tiny things which wouldn't craft. I have a copy of his actual practice plan because I got his file cabinet. 1955 practice plan, which was 3.5 hours. And it was a lot different than a practice that he ran, in 1975. But the amount of work that he put into his craft, that's how he did that.
That's how he did it.
Yeah. And it started with Piggy Lambert.
Started with Piggy Lambert. His coach at Purdue.
Recruiting. Piggy Lambert. Pretty funny story. Coach Wooden would think you should visit campuses in recruiting. Why would you go visit a school? You're going to go to school for two reasons. You know enough about the school academically, and you like to coach. No reason to go there and see it.
Right.
So, Coach Wooden was the top recruit in the country coming out of high school. It wasn't like he was, hiding under a rock. He's the greatest, arguably one of the three greatest high school players in the history of Indiana basketball, which reminds me to tell you a funny story about that. But so Piggy Lambert came to John Wooden's house, and he reminded John Wooden of his father, and that was that.